All right. Good morning, everyone. This is the February 20th, 2025 meeting of the Kingston Local Development Corporation. Thank you all for attending this morning. We have a couple of items on the agenda today, which we will go over. First, up, I think what we can do is that we still are waiting on at least one more member to be able to vote on the minutes and the treasurer's report. So I think we could just do I don't think we need to do this, but I guess it depends. I think the best way to probably start this is to have a short presentation by our Director of Housing Initiatives. Good morning, Bartek. Thanks for joining us. So I invited Bartek here today, and we have some slides that we can show you. So Bartek and I had the opportunity to get a presentation from Borough Happold, who, if you may remember, is the firm that the city hired to be able to look at the Kingston Business Park, to be able to understand whether housing would be a good fit up there and how it could possibly work and what could possibly happen. And so Bartek had just completed his work with Borough Happold, and we wanted to give you a brief presentation. We can forward along a full PowerPoint, which is very lengthy. I've asked Bartek to give an abridged version for this group this morning. So
this is extremely abridged.
Yes, just to give you a sense of where we're at and what has been going on, and there's some images that we'll show. Bartek.
Yeah, so it's great to work with Borough Happold. They said they would be done by February, and they were done as promised. And so I'm going to just give some high-level overview of their process and what the outcome was. And so just a reminder, I guess, of why we're here and why we're focusing on the business park as a place for potential housing. First and foremost, it's a place where there has already been a lot of investment made when the business park was established, right? The road was built up there. A lot of infrastructure was built up there. And there's, of the original build out, right, only a small portion of that has actually been completed. And so despite some of the topography challenges up there, some of the ecological challenges up there, it is well placed to host a significant number of housing units, due in part to the past investments that have been made. And it's also very accessible to other amenities. It has direct access to the state park, which is only going to become better and better. It's pretty close to other amenities in the city as well. It's next to elementary school, and it's next to Hasbrook Park, city-owned park as well. And so this is an existing kind of bird's eye view of the site itself, showing the parts of the corporate drive that were completed. And the larger building, as you know, is Helmet, and then the smaller building is Community Manufacturing Solutions. And the Borough Happold team did a fairly extensive overview of the site and its topography. And so this is just one slide on their analysis, but this is basically showing the topography of the site itself, and you can see where it's red, right? That's where you have pretty steep gradients that are, really difficult to build anything on. Where you have the lighter, the greener, the yellow shades, that's where you have the lower slopes, where you could potentially develop something. And basically, at the end of their analysis, the determination was made: let's completely preserve the eastern side, and let's focus development on the western side. And one of the benefits of preserving the eastern side as a block, right? You get some nice habitat connectivity with what's already preserved in the surrounding area. And you also preserve the view shed from the vantage point of the Hudson River. And you're basically hiding any development that does happen. And this is an overview of basically the massing or like where they think development could happen and the kind of the bulk and shape of that development. And then this is basically a bird's eye view of that development. And so I'm just going to, it's hard to see here, but this is Howmet. This is the existing community manufacturing solutions building. And you see here, this kind of, all this would be potentially new development.
So the road and that's Delaware sort of against the water.
Right, so this is, yeah, this is Third Avenue and then this is Delaware Avenue.
It's kind of covered by the trees against the Kingston Point.
So the big picture overview is a mixed-use development, potentially up to 600 housing units, likely developed over a long period of time in various phases. I mentioned mixed use because we would like to put some commercial up there as well. And so what that commercial looks like exactly remains to be seen, but Borough Hatfield thinks, you know, you could have like a medical office be a major tenant, so, somewhere where, you know, people would go to, and that could potentially serve the surrounding neighborhoods. It could be, you know, like a hospitality, like a restaurant. They looked at that, whether that could potentially survive up there, and it's a little bit iffy, but there's definitely potential for some commercial development. And that would, I think, obviously be a preference for it to be a mixed-use development. And I think that's also keeping in line a little bit with the idea of a business park, right? You could still have, with this housing model, some commercial up there, meeting some of the original goals of the business park itself. They recommend, you know, as part of the development, some public spaces, connections to the state park, and as well as the surrounding neighborhoods. They did do an extensive analysis of some of the infrastructure considerations. You know, one of the challenges is water, because right now all the water up there is basically pumped through a pump system up to the tenants. So that will have to be modernized essentially.
What does modernize mean? New pump, or does it have the capacity of an estuary?
Potentially a new pump. Right now, you know, basically every time there's a water need up there, the pump has to pump the water up to the business park.
But if the business park had been fully built out as light manufacturing versus houses, would that have been more water, or about the same, or housing is require more?
Well, the thing with the housing is that it's basically a 24/7 use of the pump, right? Because you have residents using the water constantly all the time. And so the pump is not going to, at this point, right, the pump is old and needs to be basically upgraded anyway. But the entire system of getting water up there will have to be rethought, because it's a very different type of use than what was originally envisioned for the original.
But like, for instance, the water line that was actually put onto the site actually envisioned much more usage.
Well, that's, I was.
Yeah, so like from that perspective,
More
yeah,
water than
there's a
housing.
big pipe, but the concern is just that no one even considered, even now, like the pump costs back then.
Yeah,
Like what should have happened was there should have been, when they first built the business park, they should have put a small tank up there so that like when the electric rates are cheaper at night, you pump all the water up to the
Right.
tank and then it slowly draws down and then you pump it all at once. Right now, they basically put on an on-demand pump, which is then on all the time.
it turns off.
And it's just, that was maybe, it was a cheaper thing to do back then, to do it this way, but in the long term, it was not the most efficient. I mean, you guys see the electric costs for, like, that's one of our biggest expenses is the business park, is just the water pumping. I think we spend $600+ every time we get a Central Hudsonville or more, just to pump the water up the
I
hill.
would pay a few thousand for the pump house to be looked at or repaired. every
Yeah,
But say you got to 300 houses in the next 5 years, what kind of bonding outlay is that to upgrade the pump, to upgrade the water? I mean, is it millions? Is it
I don't think so. It's not, I don't think it's millions, but I think that there's definitely, a decision will have to be made of whether we like want to put in an actual, different way to do it, right? So like putting in a storage tank, what Borough Apple talked about was the fact of like, sometimes people envision like a big water tank, right, that you build, which could be millions of dollars, right? Town of Ulster's trying to build one now, like they're expensive, or you can actually do in-building tanks where it's actually enough to just hold the water for that building. And those are a lot cheaper. And they're kind of more site specific instead of like neighborhood specific.
Yeah.
And those are cheaper. And I think that they thought that that was just kind of part of the development cost would be to kind of modernize that system. But, a new pump is only a couple $100,000, which I think we may need to do eventually anyway, because I think only one of the two pumps are actually working, right?
Yeah.
So,
The other thing is,
yeah.
what they didn't do was the tenants there don't pay for any of that, we pay for that. So they're paying for their water bill, but we're paying for the pump in the pump house, and that should be really distributed amongst the
Yeah,
whoever's.
creating like a water district.
Is there sewer up there too? There's already sewer.
Fiber optics and everything.
Yeah, I think with the water challenges, quote unquote, it's nothing that's a roadblock for development up there, but it is just something that will have to be considered as we proceed. Perhaps we'll also look at traffic. So if that full build out happened, what are the kind of connections that would need to be made? Would Delaware Avenue be able to handle, that level of traffic currently? And they also looked at potentially when Corporate Drive is extended, whether to connect it to the Avenues neighborhood as well. So that was also something that we looked at. There are different options kind of that we could explore going forward, but the basic conclusion is that Delaware Avenue, if that was the only means of connection, it could handle the projected traffic of the full build out. They also looked at parking and how to meet the kind of parking demands of the build out. And finally, they also looked at open space. And so they are recommending, in addition to some connections to the state park, also a kind of a public park in the center of the business park that would be kind of the meeting or the heart of the development itself, and that's where any commercial will go, and that's also where the highest density living would go as well, to create kind of a public gathering space or a core of the neighborhood itself. And then finally, this is really a conservation approach. So not only are we leaving, half of the business park untouched, right, as forest, but it's not like we're clear cutting the other half either, right? This is very much a conservation approach. So very selective clearing, prioritized biodiversity. And then also, when the business park and stuff is done, what are the kind of management practices that will foster biodiversity and habitat kind of going forward. All right, so that's a little bit about the work. So in terms of next steps, in terms of preliminary research and feasibility, that's more or less complete with Borough Happel's work. Assessment of the zoning, the original seeker, infrastructure assessment, development potential, site vision. Step number 2, potential, is to determine, any collaboration between the City of Kingston and the KLDC on moving ahead with this vision. And so this could be an MOU between the City of Kingston and KLDC outlining roles and responsibilities going forward. And then also, I think, thinking about, okay, who are the stakeholders that should be involved at this stage? At the very least, it would be the existing tenants of the business park. Number 3 is develop a request for proposals based on our preliminary research. So this would be to actually find a development partner or development partners, right? And to Hayes' point, we would have to negotiate on some of these terms, who's funding the infrastructure, what's the timeline, what are the phases that we envision? Are there any tax abatements involved? These are some of the things that will have to be ironed out. Provided that we are able to find a partner, I think this would take the form of a master development agreement where there's the roles and responsibilities of each party are lined out. The financing structure is also lined out with any funding commitments, including infrastructure, who's paying for the infrastructure. Are there any obligations, any public obligations here in terms of the road, whether the water, et cetera? And then also what are the expectations for phasing for a development of this type? And then finally, the land use approvals. So this would have to undergo a new seeker review to update what was originally done in the 90s, which only envisioned, an industrial build out. Secure any zoning changes as applicable, and then this would be under the form-based code. This would be approved as a conservation village plan. And the conservation village plan, right, 50% is left as forested. And then finally, the phased build out would commence. That's an extremely abridged version. Extremely abridged, but I will take any questions. There is the 150 slide PowerPoint that's the longer version of this, which gets to how the Borough Hamilton arrived at the rendering that you see here.
Can you explain sort of what the mixes of density would be? And is this rental, owned homes, what?
I think that's a programmatic decision that's to be determined. I could very much envision a scenario where it's a mix, right? Mix of rental and also for sale housing. And then in terms of the density, there are different, this development would take advantage of different, the zoning they're called transects. And so you have basically the higher density housing in the core of the business park around that public space. And then kind of lower density typologies kind of as you going outward from there.
But that building sort of in the foreground with like a courtyard, is that 4 stories or?
Yeah, it would be around 4 stories is what I'm envisioning. I'm trying to zoom in, but I can't. Yeah, it would be around 4 to 5 stories would be the max.
Yeah, I think like starting at that center core, which is kind of right next to that Howmet building, we felt like having more density there, the site, can help really support that density. And then as you kind of go both south, so as you head back toward the Howmet building, you'll see there's development there on the right-hand side of the parking lot. It starts to get, lower density as you go down basically that cul-de-sac, there you go. As we head down, so that's, we feel like that is the kind of community core dense areas. And then we have that roadway that kind of heads out toward the north. And so we thought of some row housing kind of along that corridor. Again, minimal impact, because that road is already practically partially built. And then we also have kind of that lower density as you kind of head back toward that Howmet building. And so, what's interesting about this kind of concept is that it really minimizes site disturbance, which also really reduces cost for the development. And it provides like a unique opportunity, as Bartek said, to kind of have multiple different types of housing and different housing, both either for sale or rentals. So we could imagine like maybe the more 3 or 4 story buildings, maybe more rentals, but then some of the outlying buildings could actually be more like condo type, housing development, which is obviously clearly needed here to be able to have more housing units in Kingston at varying levels of affordability. And so that's I think my takeaway from just this site in general was that I know that getting to 600 units will take a long time. And it's a, with a phased approach, we will, have to see what the market can bear and how this could all work. But there's a relatively small infrastructure need to have this project happen compared to, say, like when we were considering building like the ABR project out on the Hudson River, which again was like 1,200 units or something like that. There was a massive need for infrastructure from sewer and water and pump stations and like all of this craziness and like land grading, and it was just incredibly complicated and expensive, where generally speaking, this site is relatively shovel ready. And I think that's what I got from this whole process, was that this could be a relatively easy, knock on wood, 600 units of housing that the city could plan to build over the next 10 years and have a relatively, minor impact on the surrounding community, on traffic, on the view shed. Like, it's just like a hidden gem that has been kind of just hiding in plain sight in the city. So that's kind of what my takeaway was.
But there's no single family houses on 1/10 of an acre. It's all gonna be some level higher density.
That's what
Yeah.
So,
And also clustered, where there is development, we're taking advantage of anytime there's a flat area on that western side, right? Basically what you see here is that these clusters taking advantage of flat slope, flat areas on the business.
But I think what they envision, especially on kind of like the very south side, you see some, I don't know if we're gonna see any single family homes, but I do think that there could be some 2 or 3 family kind of like, shared firewall type situations where they will look like potentially single family homes, but actually be 2 or 3 families that are kind of, attached to one another.
Yeah.
Just because there's areas of the site that just is gonna require that lower density.
Can I ask a couple questions?
Sure, yeah. Mandy's just gonna ask something real quick, and you're
Go
up
ahead,
next.
yeah.
so CMS owns 7 acres. How does that affect?
Yes, so as part of some of the outreach that we would be doing, at least on what Borough Happold has indicated, is that, we would definitely like to have a conversation with CMS about some of their unused acreage, as a part of helping to make that central green project really come to fruition in a positive way. So that's definitely in the longer presentation. Borough Happold goes over how there could be a beneficial, approach that we could take to CMS. Yeah. Yeah, Sal?
First thing I want to say is thank you to Bartek, and I appreciate you kind of doing all this work with Borough, and it's cool to see what came of, what they thought. My questions, like a couple admin questions, are: did we get everything we wanted for them deliverable wise? And were you happy with the output of what they gave us?
Yes and yes.
Okay, that's all I need right now. And then my other, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, it was great.
Can we get access to a copy of this deck of the bigger?
Yep.
All right, and then my only other question is, like, types of transportation. Are there going to be bike lanes up there, or like, what else are we thinking of except for people having cars?
Yeah, so you'll see in the deck, there's a whole mobility section that reviews this. And, I think one of the challenges with bikes specifically on this site is that the site is up on a hill, right? So we do have to be realistic about how people are going to get in and out of the site. That being said, in addition to, the actual road, they are thinking of making, a few pedestrian-only connections. And so this isn't shown on this rendering, but you're going from this public square, there would be a pedestrian-only connection that's made from the business park down to the avenues. And I think that's going to be really important in the context of integrating the business park in the with the surrounding neighborhood. And also this site right here is owned by the land bank and could also be developed in the future. And, that could be a site where some commercial, neighborhood sort of commercial could maybe be a little bit more viable. And so I think making that pedestrian connection over there is going to be critical in the context of urban mobility. And then also on the top of this site, there's a potential to make another ped bike connection, maybe a car connection from the end of Corporate Drive, and this is Ulster Street right here. And so that's another potential connection point.
Would we have our bus service run up there?
Yeah, so I mean, the bus line runs right on Delaware Avenue, so I could imagine, it could go up to the business park like
As long as there's a place to turn around and say we could probably incorporate that.
Okay, anybody have any, say?
I would say when I attended the public information session, there were two big questions that came out of it, and people were talking to me afterwards related to transportation. Just what you mentioned, Sal, in terms of bus transportation, and also just access to amenities like a deli or places, because it's so far away from any shopping district, just some
Mark.
small shops and, that kind of commercial. I think those are the two things that came up.
I'm happy to see that it's still being considered for mixed use then.
Yeah.
I know it's early in the game, but has there been any pushback at all? And if so, what have people talked about?
I think there is maybe some, let's call it ecological pushback, right? That we shouldn't be disturbing the site at all. We should leave the forest as is. And so, I can understand that argument. I think, on the other hand, right, well, we can continue with the original vision, which was to clear cut, right? Much of the business park and put large, industrial warehouses. And that doesn't sound good, do you?
No.
So I think with this approach, like we can maybe have both, right? We can have conservation and also much needed housing.
Right, if it was gonna be used as intended, it would have been used as intended by now. So the pivot makes sense, sorry.
Oh, no, just, the pushback is coming from City Hudson or residents?
Oh, these are just like anecdotal,
General.
like some of the general feedback that we received we did have one public presentation on this. And then I think one of the other concerns was traffic, and
Yeah.
specifically if we did connect Corporate Drive, what that would mean for the Avenues neighborhood, which currently, right, there's very low traffic in that neighborhood right now.
I can totally understand.
Because it's more or less, it's kind of a dead end, it's not there's no through road. It's mostly used by the residents themselves, so there was some concern that if we introduced this road, this would increase.
Steve talked about 10 years, possibly to get to 600 units. Break that down, do you think 100 units could be done by 3 years, or what's sort of your sense of the phasing of it?
I think it, really depends on the ability, like if we perceive the ability to attract a development partner that kind of understands and shares this vision. I think one of the advantages of this approach that for Happold is that it sets itself up really well for a phased approach, right? Where you can build out the central part of the development, and then kind of as the market allows or as financing allows, to kind of build out the rest. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I hesitate to put a timeline
Yeah.
on it, just.
It's hard, and I think, but one of the things that we do recognize that there is an interest to build housing in the Hudson Valley, and that we have a shortage, right? And I think that, people, and there are development teams that are looking for sites that, have the correct zoning, that have interested partners, that, have control of the sites already. And I think that we at least have a lot of the pieces, I think, to be able to help make this project move forward relatively quickly. I think for our purposes, I think if the KLDC is generally supportive of this concept, we could work, Bartek and Mandy could work to start to kind of frame out what kind of this MOU could look like between the city of Kingston and the KLDC. I mean, I think from our perspective on the city side, we would like to help the KLDC move this project forward. And, Bartek has the expertise in willing to put some staff time to be able to help the KLDC kind of look for a development partner, and kind of work together to kind of move through this process. I mean, that would really be, our kind of ask today to just, if generally people are supportive of this, we could at least start on that effort. And once we kind of get to the level of putting out an RFP for a development team, that's when we'll get to see, like, if we've got 10 developers that are coming back to say, hey, we want to do this, like, it may really make the timeline go a whole lot faster than 10 years. Or if we get one, it could be like, okay, well, one group is not gonna have the capacity to do this, in a 4-year period, right?
And you envision this as having an affordability matrix and AMI.
Yeah, it would have to, obviously follow the city's, kind of minimum affordability requirements. And then, obviously as a site where there's city ownership or KLDC ownership, right? We'd of course like to help a development team to find funding to make the affordability larger or deeper as possible.
I for one am extremely excited about it. Thank you for this.
Great.
My only concern are the current residents of the avenues, and then, not my backyard type of thing. I feel like there's gonna be some pushback there, but overall I agree with Hayes.
Yeah, and so one of the questions we did have for Borough Apple, then I think that they stated that, if in the end a pedestrian and bicycle only connection to the avenues is what has to happen, then the project is still doable. Like, we could have cul-de-sacs at the end of these streets so that all of the traffic feeds back down onto Delaware, which thankfully has access to Murray, which goes right out onto 9W. So like, from a traffic perspective, like, that's the great thing that, we have such access to such main roads directly from the entrance to the business park here. And there's even like the ability to put a light back in at the end of, Corporate Drive, where there was one, the poles are still up.
Yeah.
The city took it down because it made no sense to have lights up there, but the poles are still there. So literally, if we need to go that direction, we can. But I do think that that's the one thing that we heard too from the public comments so far, is that we may have to very seriously consider having the actual vehicular traffic feed down to Delaware to really help with the concerns on Third Avenue and, Second Avenue and all of the streets down there.
It's really exciting.
Alright.
And it's, like Arctic said, it's not a high traffic street. I think it can handle 600 units.
All right, well, that's our update. We will send you the full slide deck so you can see all 150 slides. And then if folks have additional questions, you feel free to reach out to Bartek directly, and we can help answer them. And I want to thank you, Bartek, for your work on this.
Thank you.
It's really great. So, all right, good. So we're gonna go back to our agenda, move everybody up a little. So I would like to ask for approval of the minutes from our last meeting, which was on January 9th. We had a special meeting. So can I have a motion?
So
Thank you, Hayes. Second, Tony. All in favor?
I,
Okay, great. All right, treasurer's report.
Good morning, everybody. As of January 31st, we have 9 loans outstanding with a principal balance of $195,032.24. Most borrowers are current, thankfully. 3 microloans are delinquent and have been sent notifications, and 1 borrower has moved out of state and is being notified that the balance is due in full because the businesses are supposed to be operating within the city of Kingston limits. Our prior bank has merged now with the Hudson Valley Federal Credit Union, and they're not chartered to do business with us. So Mandy had to do a whole bunch of financial magic and move all of our accounts. We are now back at M&T Bank, everyone's favorite commercial bank locally. And we have not reinvested in CDs just yet because we need to kind of get a handle on a new platform and make sure what we're seeing and our access to our funds are desired, working as intended. So hang tight on that. We will be having a discussion in the near future about how we want to reallocate our liquid funds. Obviously, CDs are pretty favorable right now as rates continue to stay on the higher side. Sorry, Hayes, but they're still up there right now. Hopefully we're seeing a relief in that sometime soon. As far as old and current business goes, we did have a special meeting regarding the Kingston Standard Brewing. As you all know, we did come to an agreement on that loan, and we did approve, as the loan was presented to us. About, feels like 15 minutes after that meeting, it was a couple days after that meeting, NBT had reached out to Mandy and to let us know that the borrowers had some second thoughts regarding NBT's offer and what they were offering as far as terms go on the loan. So they're now in renegotiation with NBT, which obviously means everything we discussed on the 9th is null and void. So we need to see what the new deal is going to be. We're waiting to receive a new term sheet. Mandy and I had a meeting with NBT, and the last we knew, they were going to be presented with a new term sheet. Once that was signed off on, we will then meet again, whether it's a regular scheduled board meeting or another special meeting, and to see what the interest of the KLDC is at that time. So we're going to hurry up and wait on that one. Sadly, we thought we had a deal in place, and we don't just yet. That concludes the treasurer's report.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Tony? Sal?
Is there any way we can move some of the funds we have that aren't in investments into like a high interest savings account?
Yeah,
Because it just seems like there's some products out there that are offering, I don't know exactly what's in Ulster County, but 4%. And we're not getting 4% on a lot of that money.
well, we need to leave some of it liquid to utilize, and we're getting more than that on the CDs we have. And if we reinvest in CDs as of even today, we're gonna get significantly more than that. So we also need to keep in mind that we don't want to spread ourselves to 3 or 4 different institutions. We want to make it manageable for Mandy to access her funds and to move her funds around. So I know in our prior relationships, can't speak to the new one, we had a lot of flexibility with our CDs, as if we had to get to it, we had some access that maybe otherwise wouldn't. I don't know what it's gonna be like moving forward. It's a great suggestion, and when we get to the point of moving those liquid funds into something that pays a higher return, a savings account, a higher yielding savings account will definitely be first and foremost something we look at.
Tell me the microloans that are delinquent, what's the total balance on them?
I don't have the 3 in front of me to tell you what the balances were.
But the max.
Very low.
7,500.
Yeah.
That works.
That's not a big piece of.
No.
Yeah, 195.
1,000.
So it's
Yeah,
small.
30.
Okay.
Yes.
So as far as the bank accounts go, when I moved them, the vice president of the bank was willing to give us the same terms and rates that the city gets. And I can promise you that John makes every effort to get the most that he can for the money that he has sitting in the accounts.
Okay.
I don't have access to the accounts yet.
Yeah.
We're working on the platform. I have a training on Monday or Tuesday, the 25th, whatever day it
Is
is.
it a cash management system?
Yep, learn how to use it.
Yeah.
And then I'll have a better
Yeah.
overview for people.
Well, Mandy, thank you for helping to manage the transition. I know it was a lot of work.
Trust me, I know.
So-
Trust me, I know how much work that was.
Yeah, so thank you.
That's a career banker.
Okay, so if no other questions, I'll ask for a motion to approve the treasurer's report.
So moved.
Thank you, Hayes.
moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. We can do, well, the loan request update, I think you actually gave during the treasurer's report, so that, unless we have more.
No, but we will need to have a meeting next month. The auditors are in the process of completing the audit, and before I can upload it to the AVO, it has to be presented and approved by the board.
Great, so we'll put the March, make sure everyone puts the March meeting on their calendar now. That will be March 20th. So. All right.
Did everybody, and I'm a little delinquent, but did everybody get their financial disclosures? And
I did not get any notification that they're still waiting for any, so I'm hoping so.
Yeah, folks haven't gotten their financial disclosures in yet. They're should still do that. So if we haven't yet. So, all right, well, with that, that's all we have on the agenda today. I really appreciate everybody's time, and if I could have a motion to adjourn, we'll be all set. All right, thank you, Tony, second. All right, thank you, Crystal. Have a great day, everyone. All in favor? Aye, all right. Thanks very much.
Have a great day, everyone. Thank you.
Everybody.
Bye.